Have you ever looked at your monthly spending and thought, I didn't even buy anything big, so why does it feel like I'm always running out of money? The answer usually isn't one big expense. It's the small everyday choices that slowly build up without us noticing. Maybe it's a few more dinners ordered in because we're too tired to cook after work, or a gym membership that costs a bit more but feels justified because we're trying to take better care of ourselves. Each one on its own seems small, reasonable, even comforting, but together they quietly raise the cost of what we consider a normal month. This is what people call lifestyle inflation. And while the term sounds like a financial concept, what it really points to is something much more personal. Things that once felt like treats start to feel like essentials. That's what this video is about. We're going to look at how this pattern forms and how a low buy challenge can help bring more awareness and intention into the way we spend, without giving up the things that truly matter. Why we keep spending without realizing it. Even when we make the decision to cut back, even when we feel committed to being more mindful with money, many of us still find ourselves caught in the same patterns, spending on things we didn't plan for. Most of the time, the reason isn't about the stuff we buy. It's about what's going on inside, emotions we haven't quite learned how to deal with. Here are some of the patterns I started to notice in myself, and maybe you'll recognize them too. Number 1, the comparison. We don't always mean to compare, but it happens. It's when a colleague gets a new phone, and suddenly your old one feels outdated. Or when friends are talking about weekend getaways and somehow staying at home feels like you're missing out. We're not trying to compete, we just don't want to feel left behind. And in those moments, spending becomes less about what we want, and more about what we feel we should have to belong, or at least to feel okay. Number 2, the I deserve this loop. The I deserve this voice usually shows up after a long day, a tough week, or when everything just feels a little heavier than it should. That voice says, just order dinner, you've earned it, or buy the shoes, life is short. And to be fair, sometimes that voice is right. We do deserve rest, joy, something nice. That little hit of pleasure, that brief sense of control. It gives us relief. But over time, this habit of I deserve this turns into a loop that plays every time we feel depleted. The reward is no longer a celebration. It becomes a way of coping, a response to discomfort. Number 3, when rewards turn into routines. What makes all of this more difficult is how easily these choices turn into routines. It might start with something simple, like grabbing a coffee on the way to work after a rough night's sleep, and it feels like a small pick-me-up. No big deal. But then we do it again the next day, and again the next week, and before long, we're stopping there every morning. Not because we really need the coffee, but because it's become part of how the day begins. The action that once felt intentional now slips into habit. It no longer holds any meaning, but it still carries weight on our budget, on our energy, on our sense of control. It just becomes another part of daily life, familiar, automatic, and expensive in more ways than one. What took me the longest to understand, and maybe the hardest to admit, is that most of our impulsive spending doesn't come from joy. It doesn't even come from real desire. It comes from discomfort. These 3 things, comparison, emotional relief, and unconscious habits, don't just drain money. They drain clarity. They make it hard to tell what we actually value and what we actually need. But here's the thing. Once we notice them, we can start to take back that sense of choice. And for me, that started with something incredibly simple, deciding to try 1 month of low buy challenge. That's what we'll talk about next. The low buy challenge. The idea behind a low buy challenge is simple, but it can make a big difference. Because instead of buying things automatically, we give ourselves a moment to pause and ask, do I actually need this right now? Or am I just reaching for it out of habit? Maybe it's deciding not to click add to cart just because we're bored at home on a Sunday. Or choosing to skip the 3rd takeaway dinner this week. It's not about cutting out everything fun or forcing ourselves to be minimalist. It's about becoming more intentional. One of the clearest benefits is that we stop feeling that sense of pressure at the end of every month. We start saving for stability, for goals we've ignored far too long. Maybe it's saving for a future home, or finally building up an emergency fund. Maybe it's paying off debt, taking a course, or even just having the freedom to take a weekend off. Whatever it is, it becomes much easier to stay focused on those bigger goals when we're not constantly distracted by short-term wants. And that's why it helps to have a clear reason. Something simple and meaningful to remind us why we're doing this in the first place. It could be a number we want to see in our savings account, or a goal we're excited about. Because the truth is, the temptation to spend doesn't just disappear. But when we know what we're working toward, it becomes easier to say no to the things that don't matter, and yes to the things that do. In the next part, we'll talk about how to actually build a low-buy plan that works. One that fits into real life and doesn't fall apart after the first week. How to make a low buy challenge actually work. Starting something new always feels exciting at first, but it can get overwhelming quickly, especially if we try to change too much at once. That's often when we burn out and quietly slip back into old habits. With a low buy challenge, the key is to keep it simple. Take one step at a time and build slowly from there. This idea of starting small and focusing on one thing at a time is also a core principle in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which shows how real, lasting change often comes from doing less and just more consistently. One of the easiest ways to do that is to break the challenge into months. Instead of cutting back on everything at the same time, you focus on just one category each month. For example, January could be the month you stop ordering food delivery. February, you could take a break from buying new clothes. In March, maybe you pause all online orders. That way you're not trying to do too much at once, you're just building one new habit at a time, in a way that feels more manageable and less stressful. If you're not sure where to start, look at your recent bank statements. Which category is taking more than you expected? Food? Online shopping? Subscriptions? Pick one that feels doable, not the hardest one first. Starting where it's easiest builds momentum and confidence. It also helps to give yourself a little flexibility, just enough to make the challenge feel realistic and not rigid. Life isn't black and white, and neither is spending. For example, maybe you still eat out once a week, but only for something meaningful like a date night or catching up with a friend. These kinds of small exceptions help you stay on track without feeling restricted, because the goal isn't to cut out everything. It's to spend with more care and stay consistent in a way that actually fits your lifestyle. Another thing that makes a big difference is setting up our environment to support the change. That can be as simple as deleting shopping apps from our phones, or putting reminders of our goal where we'll see them, on the bathroom mirror, the fridge, or even our phone's lock screen. These little visual cues help keep us focused, especially in moments where the habit wants to creep back in. And here's something that many people forget. Saving money doesn't have to feel like missing out. It can actually become something we enjoy, if we frame it that way. Like a homemade dinner doesn't have to feel boring. It can be a cozy night in, a mini date, or something intentional. Watching your savings grow even a little can feel more satisfying than a package at your door. Some people even set up a separate savings account just for tracking their low buy progress. And seeing that number go up becomes its own kind of motivation. So if you're thinking about starting, here's the first step. Pick one spending category and 1 month. That's it. Start small and see how it feels. And if you want to share your goal or what category you'll begin with, leave it in the comments. We're in this together. I've been talking a lot about ideas and mindset, but you might be wondering, okay, but does it actually work? Well, I'm the proof. Just 3 months into doing the low buy challenge, I was able to buy myself a new laptop. It wasn't some expensive high-end model, but it was new and fully paid for with the money I used to spend without even thinking. Just a few months earlier, that would have felt impossible. My old laptop was slow, frustrating, and I kept putting off replacing it because I thought I couldn't afford one. But after just 3 months of doing the low buy challenge, cutting out delivery, pausing impulse buying, and being more thoughtful with where my money went, for the first time in a long while, I actually had enough saved to buy a new laptop. So if you've been thinking about trying a low buy, maybe for just a month, this is your sign. Start small. One habit, one change. You might be surprised by how far it takes you. And if you found this video helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment. I'd love to hear what your first low buy goal will be. Who knows? Maybe 3 months from now, you'll have your own story to tell.